Hey everyone, and welcome to How Do I Digital Events, guest starring Judge Bunny. I'm Tobias, an excitable L2 from Vancouver that until 4 months ago was happily living on the Magic Fest circuit. And then 4 months ago something bad happened, and all the Magic Fest cut the plug and died. And so I was out of a job. Well, mostly out of a job. Because you see, players still want to play tournaments, but they also don't want to die. These are very reasonable demands from players. I myself really empathize with these concerns. And so CFB took a look at this and thought, oh, well, maybe there's a way we can coalesce these two things and, fulfill all the player demands. And thus, the online Magic Fest was born. Currently, there are two types of digital events that are available to the majority of judges. That's Command Fest and Last Chance Qualifiers. Players Tour is also online, but the vast majority of us won't work it, considering that the staffing is even more competitive than it was pre-pandemic. And if you know anything about Pro Tour staffing, it was really competitive pre-pandemic. So let's start by chatting about Command Fests. So far, there's only been one of these, and I wasn't working it. I was playing it. So I'm going to go over mostly what it was from a player perspective, because that's the only perspective I got. So, that's all you really get here. So first off, sign on to the Discord channel. And this is effectively an online version of the Command Zone of the Magic Fest. Here's where our players will find other players to play with. There's a bot that helps you kind of get into games. So you type in the bot command, which I've got on the screen here is play 5. And then it'll match you up with other people that have typed play 5. And then find you 4 people that way. And you're probably wondering, oh, what does this 5 mean? Well, if you've ever played Commander in your entire life, you know that it's no fun to get steamrolled, and it's no fun to steamroll people unless you're a monster. So to facilitate this, CFP had players pick a power level for their deck that ranged from 1 to 10. 1 to 4, you got your derpy precons, your offbeat tribal, your 100 pile of cards that I own lying around the house. 5 to 6, you got more tuned decks. That's like, you got a couple infinite combos, your deck's really sort of doing something, but you're probably not going off on turn 3 or 4. Level 7 to 10, that's no holds barred. I'm going to go off on turn 3 if you let me, but you're not going to let me because you're playing stacks. So once the bot finds you 4 people that are playing roughly the same power level as you, it shunts you over to spelltable.com, which is a really great resource for playing webcam Magic. So 4 people got webcams, and you get to see everybody's webcam, and one person is inevitably using a fisheye webcam, and it's super annoying. But this tool is really cool. It lets you put in your commander, you can do commander damage, it's got a little monarch tracker, and it's just really fantastic. If you've never used it, I encourage you to give it a shot. It's even got some really great card tracking, it's got some card image detection software. It's really great. You can click on cards. It'll usually tell you they're planes. Occasionally, it even tells you what they actually are. Another cool thing about the Command Fest is that players were encouraged to pick teams. This most recent Command Fest, we had 5 teams. These are named after the Ikoria Triomes, and I think there's a bunch of celebrities affiliated with every team, and there were some streams going on. It was a lot of fun for people that weren't me. I didn't really care. I was like, teams, whatever. I just here to play Commander. And at the end of one of my matches, somebody's like, oh yeah, I'm just going to report my points in the channel. What team's everybody on? And I was like, wait a minute. Stop the last points? Does that mean there's winning? And they were like, yeah, you if you win your pod, or if you complete some of these like little objectives, like activating a million planeswalkers or making a bunch of tokens, you get some points. You report them at the end of your match. They go into a team points pool, and at the end of the day, a team wins. So I'm like, oh, well, what does the winning mean? So I looked to CFP. I'm like, hey, CFP, what does the winning mean? The CFP's like, I don't know, it's just like psychological validation. I'm like, oh, that's stupid. But you know what? It doesn't matter, because you don't need external validation or like, extrinsic motivation to play Commander. You need Commander motivation to play Commander. And so I played Commander. I had a lot of fun. It was really great. I think a lot of other people had a lot of fun because, CFB told me that, and people told me that. They said I'm having fun. That means they're generally having fun. And so I talked to CFB, and they said, yeah, we're probably going to run another one of these sometime in the near future. So if you're a judge looking for a thing to work, this thing's probably going to be a thing that you can work. So keep your eyes open for that. The other type of event you'll conceivably work as a judge is a last chance qualifier, or an LCQ. Winning in online LCQ currently awards you a PT invite. This is really similar to the LCQs that we had at the Magic Fest Plus. The Magic Fest Plus were, as you may or may not know, Magic Fest that were kind of glued to a Players Tour, Pro Tour, Mythic Champion, whatever they wanted to call them at the time. So what would happen is you'd play on a Thursday or Friday LCQ, and then if you won, you'd walk over to the PT, and you'd be like, hey guys, I'm just as cool as you. And they're like, no, you're not. You just walked off the street and won an LCQ. You're nothing. Right now, all the online LCQs are standard due to software limitations. You're like, well, wait, software limitations? Can't MTGO run limited? Well, yeah, MTGO can run limited, but we're not running them in MTGO. We're running them in Arena. You're like, oh, well, why are we running them in Arena? And, well, that's because MTG is old and is dying, and we don't want to use it anymore. The unfortunate thing about running all this stuff in Arena is that Arena can't really handle 6 or 7 round events. And you're like, well, wait a minute, didn't you just say we're running all the events in Arena? And I assume there's 6 or 7 rounds. How are you doing this? Well, the trick here is we're not actually running the entire event in Arena. We're running it in War. So how this works is we run the actual War, handles all the logistical tournament-y stuff. So it handles tiebreakers and matches and pairings. Through Discord, we're able to communicate announcements and like just general tournament administration to the players. And then finally, Arena is really just the engine to play Magic because that's all it can do right now. So this probably, if this sounds like a little bit of a logistical fustercluck, you're completely right. That's why we have judges. That's why you have a job. Stop complaining. So this all probably sounds a little bit overwhelming, and it is. So don't worry, that's why I'm here. I'm going to help break it down for you. So we're going to start with the player perspective, because as I always say, to be a good Magic judge, you have to understand the players, and to understand the players, you have to understand what exactly they're playing, and I don't think it's a huge stretch to think that a lot of judges probably haven't even played in one of these LCQs. I know I haven't, because I don't want to play Standard. So let's say player Kitty wants to play in an LCQ. Well, she's got 3 times she can choose from. They're run at 9 a.m., 6 p.m., and 1 a.m. These are PDT times, so they're times, I live on the West Coast, so they're times like they're the same time zone I'm in. For many of you, that's probably not true, but for me, what I see is what I get, and I think that's fantastic. So Kitty's going to pick one of these times. And once Kitty picks a time, they're going to go on to my.cfbevents.com, and they're going to find their LCQ on the page and not mush money into the screen, because that's not how online payments work. And then when they register, they're going to need to provide CFB with their Arena ID and Discord ID, because both of these are going to be used in the event. And then they have until 8:50 to figure out how the internet works and submit their deck list, very much in a way unlike I'm showing on the screen, because again, that's not how the internet works. Around this time, they should also log on to the Channel Fireball Discord server. And the first thing they might notice is there are a lot of sub-channels in this Discord. Some of them are really stupid. Mostly this one right here that I'm circling with my mouse. So I was talking to CFB while I was putting together this presentation, because they collapsed all the channels while they weren't in use. And so I was like, oh, can I get the exact name for some of those channels? And they're like, oh yeah, we're changing everything, so it looked completely different. So I made that last slide, and then I threw it in the garbage. But I didn't want to throw it totally in the garbage, so I showed it to you anyway, because that's what I experienced when I worked it, but this is what we're doing anew. Okay, so we got one channel for event announcements. That's current event announcements. We don't have any of this in 6 a.m., LCQ, 6 a.m., whatever. No, we just have one. And then we got an event general. This is for salting off if you don't want to salt off in the Salt Central channel as provided. We also have the event results channel, which I'll talk about in a minute, where you report your results. Unfortunately, they didn't take my suggestion to get rid of the Yu-Gi-Oh channel, so you still have the option to go to the Shadow Realm if you want to. A little before 9 a.m., the round is going to start. Something like this is what the players are going to see. They're going to see this thing. It's going to show them a link to the pairings, and it's going to show them a link to the deck lists. The actual URLs aren't going to change throughout the event, so Kitty can just, if Kitty wants to save some time later, she just opens them up in separate tabs, and then she can reload them every time she thinks the round is going to start and DOS CFB's website if she wants to. You're probably kind of curious about this deck list thing that I just mentioned, because as judges, we can't really do deck checks, okay? So we've adopted an approach akin to the Pro Tour, where players see their opponent's deck list before the match begins, and in this case throughout, because if we want them to stop looking at the deck list, we can't really stop them from looking at deck lists. We can take the page down, but then we have to tell everybody, okay, guys, can you please all close the tab that you opened? And freaking no one's going to do that. Like, I know I wouldn't. So anyway, once the announcement happens and Kitty is done dirtling around lists, they got about 10 minutes to hop onto Arena and challenge their opponent in tournament mode. Okay, the other thing observant people in the audience might notice is that the announced round time is not 50 minutes, it's 60 minutes. This is because Arena has an in-game timer that allocates 30 minutes to each player. And it would be really uncomfortable and awkward for players if we walked in when they both had 5 minutes left on the Arena clock and we're like, hey, you guys are done now, happy draw. And they're like, wait a minute, no, I was making plays based on the fact that I had 5 minutes left. This is ridiculous. I want a refund. I'm going to riot. I'm going to report you to WPN. So to keep players happy, we keep them at 60 minutes. After 60 or 50 or 10 or however long minutes it takes Kitty to finish their match, they're going to report their results in the event results channel. I got the correct formatting for results reporting here. They can also drop here, but like real players, they're probably just going to dirtle off without dropping, and then it's going to be really awkward next round when somebody no-shows. Kitty's going to repeat this process for 6 or 7 rounds, depending on how many players there are. You might notice that I've got some numbers on the screen, and I've also got this word normally beside everything. That's because if you're checking the MTR and fact-checking everything I'm saying, which you should be doing because, you know, I might be just spewing lies at you, you'll notice that Normally for 65 to 128 players, for example, we have 7 rounds, but for the online events, we only have 6 rounds. And I thought this was really interesting. So I asked CFB, I'm like, hey, CFB, why do we cut our round out? And they're just like, well, instead of a top 8, we run a top 16. And I was like, oh, well, wow, that's also really interesting. Why do you run a top 16? And they said, oh, well, top 16 is a lot more logistically light to run, and it runs way quicker, and we don't have to staff people as long. And I was like, okay, but that's not different for online. Like, that's the same as real life. And they were just like, yeah, but it's so much quicker and better. And I was like, all right, well, you know what? Nobody's complaining, and my shift is shorter, so I'm going to stop asking questions. If Giddy makes it to top 16, they're going to notice that their choice of player draw is still determined by Arena and not by who has the higher seed. Again, this is because we're only running individual matches in Arena. Arena doesn't know you made it to top 16. Arena doesn't know your first seed and have gone second literally every single match in top 16, and that you're really salty about it. Arena's just like, wow, you're playing a tournament mode match. I'm so excited. I'm glad you're here. So that's basically the entire player side, but what about the judge side? Well, let's say you've been hired to judge one of these online LCQs before the day of the event, probably a couple days before the day of the event, because let's be honest, there's a lot of stuff you need to do in preparation, okay? You need to check out the player FAQ. You should also check out the judge FAQ. You should definitely check out the digital IPG and MTR. And you're like, wait, digital IPG and MTR, what the heck is that? And yes, you heard me right. We have a digital MTR and a digital IPG now. With the advent of online events, we now have digital versions of all our favorite rules and policy documents. And you might be a little worried. You're like, oh man, the old paper MTR and the old IPG were really long and they took me a while. I don't want to read the new ones. But you'll be happy to know that the new ones are way shorter because a lot of stuff has just been simply cut out because it's not applicable in an online environment. I'm going to quickly go over the most exciting changes, starting with the MTR. So the first change is the types of information. In the old MTR, we had status, we had free, we had derived and private. Okay, but in the new documents, they dump status and derived since those are generally just made into free information by the game client. So like on MTGO and maybe one day on Arena, if you have a Tarmogoyf, you're going to scroll over Tarmogoyf and the client is going to be like, yo boy, that's a 6-7, okay? If I scroll over Tarmogoyf on Arena, what's not going to happen is it's going to be like, well, why don't you check the graveyard yourself, you scrub lord, which is what your opponent would say in real life. So because of that, we only have 2 types of information now. Next thing that they addressed that I actually thought was really good was the fact that you're actually allowed to stream your match. They mentioned that you should have a temporal delay of 2 minutes, though it's not required, which makes sense if you thought about it for more than 18 seconds. Because while it is an infraction, it is OA if your opponent to stream snipe you. You don't want to make it super easy for them to cheat. Make them work for it if they're gonna cheat. Okay. The IPG is a little more interesting. So in the trash can, we have game players, we've got LPVs, marked cards, CPVs, and infinite shuffling. Not that we ever use CPV anyway, but now it's just simply gone because players literally can't commit these as mistakes. They can definitely commit them as cheating, but then they're cheating, and we can just handle it with the cheating documentation. Unsporting conduct, slow play, improperly determining winner, bribery, and wagering are all basically the same, though they're way harder to moderate. So something like this, unless your player is very good at Photoshop, if they give you a screenshot for improperly determining a winner or bribery, you can toast their opponent pretty good. But if they don't report it, you're probably never going to find out about it. This is not great, but whatever. Theft and aggressive behavior are also still in the IPG, but they really only apply LAN events. And the whole reason we're in this mess right now is because we can't have LAN events and we shouldn't have people in the same room as each other. So what's actually new with the digital IPG? We talked about stuff we threw in the garbage and stuff that we're not changing, but what's actually new? Well, there's a couple things. Again, I'm going to talk about those right now because that's why you're here. So the first thing is outside assistance. We always had outside assistance, so this isn't really new. It's just an update of an old thing. It's the same idea of getting or giving private information about a match. This can be, in the form of sniping your opponent's live stream, texting their mom, asking their little sister what's in their hand, or using some sort of third-party hacking software that's really sketchy. And I mentioned third-party software, so this is where I segue into talking about deck tracking software. Deck tracking software like Untapped, which, CFB is already kind of endorsing, that's totally fine, which is good because that means that CFB isn't doing anything super sketchy and isn't endorsing something that's illegal. The reason that's fine is because it only tracks public information. It's not, giving me information about my opponent's hand. It's just telling me things that I should already know, like stuff they've already played. Next, we've got an exciting new tournament error. This is disconnecting. So If you disconnect during your match, but then you manage to reconnect and sort yourself out before Arena starts auto-passing priority, you get a warning. This feels kind of like slow play, to be honest. Like, it's going to happen all the time, but players are probably not going to report it unless you disconnect like 20 times. The more exciting part of disconnect is if you actually disconnect and don't manage to reconnect before Arena starts auto-passing priority. So let's go through an example. Let's say you win game 1. That's great, but then you run into some problems in game 2, okay? You manage to fix the problem, but by the time you get back in, Arena has already conceded the 3rd game of the match. Well, this kind of sucks and isn't super fair to you because, you would have liked to play that 3rd match. I mean, you're fine with mucking game 2 because your thing caught on fire. So how we fix this is both players reconnect. We get your opponent to concede game 1. We get you to concede game 2. And then you play game 3 as normal, and we have fair and balanced magic. Obviously, just like in real life, if a player is completely inert for 10 minutes, we just match lost them, tardiness, drop them from the event, and then they come back and cry later and say that they were not completely inert for 10 minutes, which is a lie. Next, we got another new infraction. This is USC moderate. It comes with a game loss. The part of me that really likes vertical cycles is really excited about this because now we have a USC that's a warning, we got a USC that's a game loss, and we got a USC that's a match loss. So we got all 3. So what this basically encompasses is harassing behavior. So you go on, the group chat, and you're like, hey, my opponent's so lucky. My opponent not skilled. My opponent just drew a million good cards in a row, and that's the only reason they won. They literally made no skillful plays. They have no idea what they're doing. Basically being a salty boy really loudly where lots of people can hear you. I was like, this is really weird. Why did you decide to make a new USC for this? So I asked some of the policy writers, I'm like, why is this here? And they're like, well, these sorts of behaviors, we felt like they merited a game loss, and they were more likely to incur online than in real life. Like, you don't just kind of scream in the hall. Well, sometimes people do scream in the hall about their opponent's so lucky, but it's not quite as obnoxious there, I think. It doesn't happen quite as much. So like, we wanted them to be game loss, so we made a new thing so we could give them game losses. Deck problem and decklist problem have been kind of glued together for online events into deck problem. It's most likely a player is going to bring this to your attention because, like I said earlier, we're not running any deck checks. So it's going to be the player themselves or their opponent. If their opponent says, hey, they're playing cards not on the deck list, investigate for cheating. They might be cheating or they might just be dumb. If a player brings it to you, they're probably not cheating. They might be, but they're probably not. So the big issue is if they report this to you in between rounds, okay? So like in between rounds, looking at the deck list, like, oh crap, I screwed up. And they say, hey judge, I screwed up. And you're like, okay, cool. So you issue them the game loss, just like in real life. And how this works is they're going to scoop their next match, game 1, right? But if you've ever played Arena, you might realize why this is a problem. And this is a problem because then going into game 2, their opponent's going to get the option to sideboard. And because deck lists are open, they're going to sideboard really, really well. In Paper Magic, we have this adage or mantra. I don't know if I'm using adage right. I hope I am. We have this mantra that says if no magic has been played, then no sideboarding occurs. But unfortunately, again, Arena has like this thing where it's just going to let you sideboard and we can't stop it. And it's a big logistical hurdle to try and instruct players not to do it. So it's fine. This is perfectly legal. Even if no magic was played, if the client lets you sideboard, you're allowed to sideboard unless it's a bug. Which segues really nicely into my next thing. What happens if Arena commits a GRB? Okay, we all know WotC has a rather sordid history with like actually fixing bugs and problems. Thank you, Wall of Roots. Well, the answer to the question depends on whether the bug is on the list of known bugs. If the bug is on the list of known bugs, it's a feature, not a bug. And if it's not on the list, we handle it like an anomalous situation in real life and bother the head judge. And I was like, oh, list of known bugs, it's really interesting where I find that list. I asked a bunch of people. I spent a while following links. I even clicked on a link on the Arena website that was like, hey, here's a list of known bugs, and it just took me to the place to report bugs. And I was like, oh, this isn't really what I clicked on, but I guess I'm here now. I clicked around. I spent a couple hours. Eventually, somebody's like, oh, yeah, I have a link to this forum post that was last updated 4 months ago, maybe 5 months ago now, with a list of known bugs. I don't know if this is still relevant. I don't know if this is still current. I don't even know if this is still considered a list of known bugs, but I'm going to include the link in the description because it was the best I could do. So you know what? I tried my best. I'm not wasting any more hours on this hole. So anyway, now you read the documents, so you're a little more prepared for your event. The next thing you should do before working the event is make sure you have the pairings tab and the deck list tab open for your event So if players have any questions, you're not screwing around going, oh, I don't know, let me look up who your opponent is. It looks unprofessional. It'll look like an idiot. Don't do that. Next thing you're going to do is hop on the admin chat Discord channel at 8:30. Check in with your head judge or scorekeeper. They're kind of glued together in online events because, we only really have teams of 2 working on these. They don't require a bunch of administrative overhead. There's usually your head judge scorekeeper amalgamation, and then there's yourself. At this point, the head judge or scorekeeper is going to give you a link to the Google Doc. It's got a bunch of really helpful canned responses and pre-formatted announcements and stuff. Remember the nice announcement from earlier? That was on the Google Doc. I didn't write that. That's why it looks so good. You'd know if I wrote it because it would look way stupider and probably have 3 spelling mistakes in it. After checking in, you should also check the admin help channel, see if any players are having problems signing up or submitting their deck list. Usually they aren't, but sometimes they are, and sometimes other players are trying to help, and they're all just terrible and have no idea what's going on. At about 8:40, your head judge is going to post a list of players that are missing deck lists in the admin text channel. Sometimes these players have submitted their list to the wrong event. Sometimes they just forgot that they had to submit a list. Sometimes they thought they submitted a list and it just didn't work. Whatever. Your job is to poke them so they don't get a game loss and then salt off in group chat, okay? But how do you contact these players? Well, you press Control-K, okay? That's like the command for Discord to bring up this little window where you can find people. And the next step, you're probably saying, well, obviously, Toby, what I do is I copy and paste the player's name in here. No, you don't, because Discord doesn't work that well. If you do that, sometimes it doesn't find the player. What you want to do is you want to manually type their name preceded by the @ symbol, because then it's way more likely to actually bring up their name in the suggestions. Otherwise, it's going to be like, oh, this guy's not on the server. I don't know why it does that. Whatever. We just work with the technology we're given, okay? A little bit before 9 a.m., you got to post the announcement in the announcements channel about the round start time. And this is where there's the biggest flurry of activity. People are going to be like, oh, my deck list is wrong. Or my name's spelled wrong. Oh, it shouldn't fight me. And, you want to address all of these player problems as they come up. The biggest problem is going to be players having trouble connecting, okay? So first thing is if players are saying, hey, we're having trouble connecting, tell them to friend request each other, okay? And then get them to send the challenge request again. I don't know why this works, but sometimes this just fixes the problem. The next problem, or the next thing you do in this troubleshooting tree is if that still doesn't work, you get them to exchange screenshots of their challenge requests, okay? Because 99% of the time, it's not actually a technology issue, it's a player issue. Somebody spelled something wrong, somebody put yes and said no, I don't know, whatever. At this point, the players review the screenshots like, oh, you spelled my name wrong. And then they'll fix it and they can play from there, okay? After the beginning of the round and all the player problems have been taken care of, you can kind of relax until it's time for the end of the round. Generally, players don't really have issues during a match. Maybe there's some disconnect things. Maybe they want to get angry in group chat. Maybe they just want to tell you about how standard's dumb. You just listen, you smile, you nod. Keep an eye on the screen. Make sure nobody's freaking out, okay? Because otherwise your head judge is going to get mad that you're not doing your job. But you can kind of relax for the most part. Also, maybe flip back over that Google Doc I talked about earlier because there's a tracker in it that tracks how many remaining matches are in the round, okay? And about 10 minutes before the scheduled round time, or when there's only 2 matches remaining, you need to poke those players to make sure they're actually still playing the event and haven't wandered off to play Overwatch or Fortnite or whatever else is really cool, okay? So overall, working digital events is surprisingly like normal events. It's a short burst of activity during round turnover and a long stretch of time where not much happens while players play their matches. It's a little more boring because, during the round when you're at a normal event, you can watch Magic and stuff, but at a digital event you can't really watch Magic. I mean, I guess you can open a stream if you want to simulate the experience, but that's kind of weird. So, you're kind of just, tech support. So at this point you might be saying, gee, Toby, that sounds really cool. How do I apply? And my answer is currently on Judge Academy. The application links are posted. So that's where you can actually apply to these sorts of events. Make sure you turn on your notifications on Judge Academy because, sometimes they don't work. And then you'll be sad if you miss out on the opportunity to work at Command Fest because, Judge Academy's broken. So that's all I really had to say about working digital events. There's a couple things I didn't cover because when I made this presentation, I texted a bunch of people and I was like, hey, can I have some information? And a lot of them got back to me the morning of the presentation, and I didn't really have time to make bunnies for those. But since this is a YouTube video, feel free to post your questions and comments in the YouTube thing down below, and maybe I'll answer them, and maybe I won't. I don't know. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching Judge Bunny. I'm Tobias. I'm going to stop recording now.